So in March of 2012, we were working on a next generation console game.
It was really exciting, but it was a lot of work, and unfortunately, the game got canceled.
With these larger budgets, when you crash hard. And for a company the size of Obsidian to have, like a project canceled like that, it had a big impact on us financially.
It was really kind of sad, and so we, trying to pick ourselves up and figure out what we wanted to do, and we're kind of tossing around ideas. We tried to pitch that game again, with kind of changing the world and things like that. But what it comes down to is what are we gonna do about it? And the first thing is, well, we got to lay people off.
We're watching dozens of people clearing out their desks and leaving. A lot of people who had worked here for years and years. It really sucks in those circumstances because in some cases you have to lay off people who, they're great.
Firing or letting people go is just horrible. I mean, you talk to anybody who runs a business, it's just bad. And for me and the other guys that run Obsidian, it's doubly bad because it's a public statement of failure.
It's terrible for the people still at the studio as well because, now we don't have a project to work on. That's what we do here. We work on projects. And when you don't have a project, you feel like a lost soul, kind of.
But what's hard about it is that when we do a layoff, it's public. People know, all the publishers know, and we lose 2 points. We lose 5 points. We obviously, because it was obviously our fault, because that's the thing, right? It's like, well, we're the company that had to go through the pain, so we are the ones who must have failed.
And as the months went by after that cancellation and we still didn't get a project, it got worse and worse and worse. And we kind of had a date in mind where we're like, if we pass this date, then we're basically screwed, because we were basically going to run out of money.
Having this happen makes it even harder to go get the next thing so that I can keep on paying the people and keep everybody employed that's still at the company even after the layoff.
We were all kind of, just coming to work just to come to work. We weren't actually working on anything.
I think for weeks after that, people were just really in a funk, and like I said, we were trying to get back into the rhythm of pitching to publishers and going and talking to publishers, but we had just been burned really badly, and it really made it difficult to go out and have high hopes for what we were going to do.
So whenever that happens, I mean, you eventually have to get to, like, what do? You eventually get to, like, screw it. Let's pack up the bags, let's turn the lights off, or you go, okay, what are we gonna do about it?
Chris Avallone and I think a few other people at the office, we were kind of discussing like, oh, we should do a Kickstarter, but nothing really got off the ground.
I had been looking at Kickstarter for a while personally, but a lot of other people had as well. I think Nathaniel Chapman, a guy who used to work here, actually was one of the biggest proponents of trying to use it for game development.
There's a few projects. I think there's a dice game that made like 200 grand on Kickstarter. We were just laughing about it. We're like, oh, we should put our game up on Kickstarter. Let's see what happens. If a dice game could make 200 grand, that means that there's something there.
And we talked about it, and then Double Fine did the Double Fine Adventure Kickstarter, and that pretty much said, yes, you can do it.
Because I think they made like $1 million in a day on Kickstarter. And so we were kind of like, holy crap.
It was so amazing to hear what the guys at Double Fine were able to do, just because it was like, wow, we could do this.
It reached a certain point where I said to the owners, if I can't be involved in it, that's fine, but we should do it.
I think he went to Fergus and said, we have to do a Kickstarter right now. Like, this is the time to do it, and you should put Adam on the project.
And then Chris Parker, one of the other owners here at Obsidian, he came and said, why don't we just tell them to do it?
So it was just me for, I want to say 2 months. and I was tasked to put together the pitch and kind of generate game ideas and kind of get all that together.
And at that point, it was Adam and Josh talking about it and figuring out what we could do and kind of even off in their own little world for a little while.
That day of doom that I was talking about earlier, that day of doom was fast approaching. So we had to hit it out of the park. The first thing I did was kind of got the leads of the studio together. I did a few different meetings, brainstorming meetings.
And we're like, you know, we've always wanted to go back and kind of make one of these traditional RPGs.
And in one of the meetings, I think it was a meeting with Fergus, Darren, Tim Kane, Josh, and Chris Avalone. I think 3 of us kind of had the same idea.
I said, you know, hey, why don't we make a game that feels like 2nd edition D&D Forgotten Realms, party-based. You make one character, you add companions into the story, like Baldur's Gate. It has that exploration feel where you're kind of out exploring the wilderness and finding all these little adventure locations, and you're tied into this personal story that affects the larger world.
I think people were on board with the high concept idea of bringing back the spirit of the Infinity Engine games. That's another thing with Kickstarter is nostalgia is a big thing with Kickstarter. A lot of our fans were looking for this type of game. This type of game wasn't made for 10 plus years.
And so it was sort of like a double thing. Like, it got us to go make something something more traditional, something we love, but also now something we get to own.
So after that PowerPoint presentation, you know, the owners approved the concept of the game. So that was like a 3-week process of coming up with the pitch, the script for the pitch, editing it, and filming it.
Hi Kickstarters, I'm Fergus Urquhart, the founder of Black Owl Studios and the CEO and founder of Obsidian Entertainment. We've spent years putting a whole group of people together who love making role-playing games and are really the best guys on the planet to do it. We're excited to talk to you today about
After we
Project
launched,
Eternity,
it was
which is
sort
a
of
wholly
like,
fantasy
you
role-playing
don't even
game
know,
with
and I was talking to Brian Fargo about this, and, you know, they did Torment, which actually earned a little bit more than Eternity. And, you know, when they went out, it's like, well, what's gonna happen, you know, and you hope that you have a good idea, and it's even like when you're launching a game, you don't always know.
We were making bets to see how much we would make in the first day, and a lot of us didn't think that we would make more than $100,000. And I think by the time I hit refresh, so I put it up there and I hit refresh and we already made like $800, like in 10 seconds.
You know, that morning I was hopeful but kind of skeptical. And when it launched and it started getting money, I was like, oh, okay, cool. People are looking at it and they're giving money, but I didn't really perceive the rate that it was going up.
So I'd go into someone's office and I'm talking to them about a thing, and they were just sitting there with F5 on the Kickstarter page going, hit it, and they're like, another 5,000. Another 5,000, you know, and I would have these short conversations with people, like 5 minutes, and they're like, we just made $5,000, and you know, and we all went out for beers, you know, that night, and I think, you know, by the time everybody kind of went home and things like that, I think we'd already gotten like $750,000 or $800,000.
We reached the initial goal, I think, in 27 hours.
Basically, like, a lot of us felt like we saved the company. Like, it was probably the best day in Obsidian's history. We basically just sat and watched that number all day.
And then, you know, it was about middle of the next day where we hit 1 million, and a couple hours later that we hit 1.1. And a lot of it is like, we weren't prepared.
Hey everybody, 1.5 million. Pretty darn amazing. Thank you everyone who's contributed so far. Once we passed $2 million, I said, okay, we're really making this game and it's really gonna be pretty big. And the thing is, it had been kind of exhausting to that point, but it was not anything compared to what the next month was going to be.
Because it meant, oh, we all have to be in this weekend because we need stretch goals and we need this and we need that and we need to be communicating.
We were really overwhelmed by how much money came pouring in. We were kind of expecting it to be high, but not that high and not that fast. And so people really demanded stretch goals right away.
So the stretch goal is a way of saying, okay, this is funded. Do you want more of this stuff? But we did not have those nailed down at all. So the next morning, got up, ate, went to work, and we all just got in the lounge and we're like, okay, I guess people want us to make this game. What else are they going to want us to make?
Our fans have a kind of conceived notion of how big these types of games are, just based on the games like Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2, Icewind Dale. They have, they expect at least a 40 to 100 hour game, like tons of content.
All of us were in a lot of ways scrambling. I mean, and hopefully what it looked like from the outside is that, wow, we had our crap together. On the inside, it didn't always feel that way.
And people noticed. Like, some people would say, like, it sounds like you guys are just kind of making stuff up as you go along. And I'm like, well, like, I kind of am. And they're like, well, why isn't this all thought out? Because that's why we're kickstarting it.
It was really learning every day, like how do you run a Kickstarter? Like, how do you run a campaign? Because that's ultimately what a Kickstarter is. Like, none of us have ever run a political campaign or anything like that, but a Kickstarter is almost like that.
Well, so normally, if we were developing a game, we would develop the pitch and take it to the publisher, and then in pre-production, we have all that time in pre-production to think about all the details, and we can kind of ruminate on it. There's a luxury in Kickstarter. You don't have time to do that. It's pretty nerve-wracking. So usually when I design settings and I design worlds, I go at a very slow pace because I do things like write orthography for languages, like fictional languages. I research a lot and do a lot of things over time, but I needed to suddenly just turn things around, almost, not quite daily, but very rapidly. My next update will actually be about mechanics. Today I wanted to talk about the souls and the technology stuff.
So the final few days of the Kickstarter, we were pushing towards kind of the highest amount that a game ever made with Kickstarter.
We made almost as much the last day as we made the first day.
It was crazy. We had asked for $1.1 million and gotten 3.9 plus anything in the PayPal. So
the company was so behind it and everybody was excited. I think we had like 100,000 or more people on Twitch watching us. I think there was even a press guy on, I think it was PC Gamer Online. He even said, that was his whole thing. It was like, wow, it was just fun to be there with them and everybody else.
We were so excited that it was distracting to the other teams at Obsidian.
3, 2, 1,
we weren't wondering if we were going to make our goal. We'd already made our goal. We'd already made our goal 3 times over, and so everything at that point was just gravy, and it just meant we could make the game even better.
1, we didn't think we were going to be able to make a game like this again. 2, we were worried about the state of the company before we started the Kickstarter. We were looking and saying, like, we're a bunch of people right now that are not bringing in money from a team that we're the remnants of people after the layoffs had happened. So from really, really low morale to probably the highest I've ever seen the morale at the company.
We finally kind of got off that treadmill. I always kind of say that when I'm talking to people, is that as an independent developer, we're on this treadmill and we're just kind of treading water. This was like the opportunity for us to jump off that treadmill and kind of run at our own pace.
Now we have, in essence, our backers during the development of this. And it's serious to us because they've already given their money, so we owe them. Like, it's our responsibility that we hold up our end of the bargain as much as we can.
We're gonna see if we can do it. Yeah. There's a lot of pressure on us. Obsidian and our team has a responsibility to our backers and to Kickstarter and for the future of Kickstarter to actually produce a game that's good and produce something that people will enjoy so that people trust Kickstarter and people will trust us so we can continue working on games like this. It's all on us right now. It's, there's not a publisher involved. There's not a whole lot of outside influences involved. It's our game. It's our time to shine. So it's our time to step up to the plate and make sure that we can hit a home run. So typically how we make a game is we have a pre-production period and then production period. So the pre-production is trying to figure out how to make the game, and then production is actually making the game.
Pre-production on a lot of games that I've worked on has been really abstract or dealing with very high-level philosophical things. On this game, I said, look, we're making a game that is like the Infinity Engine games. It's going to have this sort of a camera. It's going to be fixed. The environments are going to be 2D. You're going to use marquee select with a mouse. and this, it's going to be on this. End of story. And there wasn't really debate about that stuff. Everyone was like, yeah, of course, and no problem.
Okay, so we have this really cool screenshot that we rendered. Now, how do we turn that into the game? Now you need to fold it back up into a development process, which is, okay, so you guys need to define what is that first prototype for the game that we're gonna make, and based upon the resources you have now and the resources we think we're gonna have, can you make that, and when can you make it by?
And so what we've done with Project Eternity is we've kind of scheduled it out in multiple prototypes, and we're trying to prove to ourselves that we can actually build this game. And not only to ourselves, but to the owners as well. And so we're trying to keep the team as small as possible. Let's figure it out first, and then once we enter production, we can add more people to the team. But the team size at the end of the day, when we're at full production, is still going to be really small.
There can't be kind of 3 producers. There can only be a producer. There's going to be 1 guy doing, or 1.5 guys doing character animations, and not 5. And that's really how we have to manage it. For some of us, it's not that different, just because that's what we used to do. One of my first games was a game called Shattered Steel that was made by BioWare. I was the producer. They're up in Canada. I was here in Irvine, and I wrote all of the dialogue. You say that nowadays, it would be crazy, like that doesn't happen. But I guess that's what Eternity is. It's kind of going back to, like, we all gotta wear different hats. I think sometimes when you have these huge teams, like, you think that to do anything you need a huge team, and you don't.
So on the creative side of things, we have George Zeitz, Chris Avalone, and Eric Fenstermaker, and they are responsible for the story and the creative lore part of the world, and they're also going to be writing the game. Bobby Knoll is our lead level designer, and so he gets to design the maps and stuff like that. And then we have Tim Kane, and Tim has been in the game industry for 30 years, and he's a hybrid. He can program and he can design stuff. On the art side of things, we have Dimitri Berman, who's our lead character artist. Dimitri basically designs the outfits and models and textures, the outfits of the characters and all the creatures and the monsters. We have Hector Espinoza, who is our lead environment artist, and he makes all the areas that you visit in the game, and gets to make really beautiful landscapes. And then we have Mark Bremerkamp, who's our lead animator. His responsibility is to make things move and to bring things to life. My name's Adam Brennicke, and I'm executive producer and lead programmer on the project. My polar opposite on the project is Josh Sawyer, and he's the project director. We kind of have a push and pull on how our dynamic works. He's kind of the creative guy who kind of pushes his vision. My job is to make sure that we're on time and on budget. And Josh is kind of figuring out, like, what is this game all about?
I want to make a game that captures what I feel were the best elements of the Infinity Engine games. I want to have really beautiful, unique, dynamic environments. You go into the world and you feel like, oh, this is like amazing, and I want to explore every inch of this world. I want to make a game that has a story that is really interesting, has lots of awesome characters that you love to learn about and love to interact with, and that you as a player have a lot of agency in resolving. I want to have a game system, like the RPG mechanics and the combat mechanics, that really gets you interested in how you build your characters, how you use them in combat, how you overcome obstacles. We believe you want a challenge when you buy this game, because those games were challenging. And when we look at whether it's system mechanics or the interface or things like any of that sort of stuff, we keep that in mind. So if you make a crazy party, like this is the party of paladins, we're all holy warriors, it's paladins and clerics only, or really diverse, or only Orlans, whatever you come up with, you're going to have your own challenges, but they're going to be your challenges. And that's really going to stay with you. Cool. A couple of brief things before I talk about the prototype. So the Mac version, as I sent out last week in that screenshot, the Mac version is... So we are done with our first prototype. And the end of that first prototype was Really, the end of that first prototype was the visual demo that we released to the public, where you saw the waterfall and the water and the day-night cycle and all that stuff.
Prototype 1 is, let's call it, it's not meant to be pretty. It's supposed to just have the basic core things you can do in the game, and it's just getting everything online and making sure the core, like just walking around. I think the example we've used before is that if we have one room and it's not fun to walk around in that one room, then there's no point to go into 2 rooms. And so that's actually what happened during Prototype 1, was a lot of redoing and tuning and polishing and changing the control mechanics in the game, so it felt more and more fluid and more like the Infinity Engine games, which Eternity is based off of.
Just some highlights of the things that we're going to be focusing on. So we're going to do one major HUD element with NGUI. That also means that we're going to try to have close to final art for that. Also things like footsteps, which we'll have to figure out how difficult that is.
The state of the game where we're at now is the team is making Prototype 2.
Patrols and encounters we're going to be working on within Prototype 2, and also Fog of War and the day-night cycle. Color grading has already gone in, but we're going to work on it. Prototype 2 is a new set of technical features, things like Fog of War or AI for characters, faction reputation, stuff like that.
Now we have to create a bigger area. Now the art needs to be much more final. You need to actually be able to do real game stuff in it.
And so we're trying to figure out, like, here's an example quest of what we want to build. How do we actually do it?
As far as areas that we're doing, I drew this a little too small, so apologies for that. But so this is all in the document, but it's more areas, although the areas most of them are smaller areas. And those buildings are a 2-story inn, a pawn shop, a mysterious building, which is the entrance to a dungeon. The dungeon is curiously huge. This is mostly because we want to build out an Infinity Engine style dungeon that's a little more sprawling and more unique in how it twists and turns. That's kind of the goal of that. The wilderness area is another medium wilderness. Part of the reason why we want to do this is we want to try to more rapidly develop an exterior environment. In the last prototype, we were sort of recreating the old exterior environment. We want to make one from scratch, see how quickly we can prototype it on the design side, and then how quickly Hector can build it. And then within that area...
And we're also trying to figure out, like, how fast we can do things.
Modularity is important when it comes to laying out big worlds, you know, like trying to get as much as reuse as possible. We want to create this really visually striking world, and a lot of the times these challenges are with just the amount of detail you put in, the density of these things.
And so we can project out, like, say we have 100 different areas that we need to make in this game. How long is that going to take us? Like, is that going to take us into 2018? It might. The second prototype should be done in about 4 weeks from now. We're kind of taking a village area. So we have a village, we have another wilderness area, we have a big dungeon that we want to do, but we have a few new creatures that we're making. We have an ogre that we're making right now. We have a dragon hatchling, and all this kind of fits together. So it's almost like playing a little piece of the game.
This is just water, by the way. Very suspicious, I know. But James, talk about what you're working on. So we have our character scrums and our environment scrums. They're really just small meetings where we get together in the lounge with the TV on, and we go through people's their daily tasks.
How many polys is that guy? Like the game version?
The game version with all development for is like around 3,500K triangles. I mean,
All right.
I try and get everybody to, have a voice, to basically tell their own point of view on the thing that they're doing. What, the in-game mesh is what?
3,800.
3,800? Okay.
Sounds like a lot to me.
Well, it is what, I think it's fine for him.
In the case of concept artists, we show the characters that we're on, and it gives the team a chance to give their input separate from the art directors.
Four on the females looks very maid-like.
Looks very what like?
Like a maid.
Yes.
Like she's cleaning.
That was I think pulled straight from a dirndl.
One of the things that I was taught in school is never to get married to your design. Do the best you can, but ultimately it's a fluid process.
I try not to get married to my work. It's one of the things I learned
pretty early on working in the industry.
If we wanted to do dresses, could we do something where it's sort of like it's split and then there's like another piece?
I am really loving this project. It is actually really enjoyable to work on a small team. It's probably the most fun I've actually had on a project.
It's a small group. There's a lot of collaboration, and it's also an experienced group. So everybody pretty much knows what needs to be done.
I just love the feeling of having a small team, having my voice actually count.
I just have to jump around and kind of just see where everybody's at and throw in my 2 cents and then tweak it a little bit more. We just need to make sure that everybody's kind of marching in a unified direction. If there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.
Sweet.
So we're going to go talk to the concept artist now. Every game has a visual problem that needs to be solved. Right now, I'm just trying to come up with reasonable approaches that are modular, reusable, that allow for us to maximize our time and the level of detail. It doesn't matter if you can come up with this great design idea, it has to be makeable. Nobody's not finishing their work around here, ever. When you do have a tighter budget, you just kind of have to narrow your scope and just be a little sharper.
We're basically at the midpoint of prototype 2. We are designing the first wilderness area. Currently we have one village that we designed out, which Rob did, and people saw on the Kickstarter. Hector is currently modeling that out, and we are trying to jump ahead of him and start on the next area.
So we need to rescale that and scale it up.
It feels good, right? Like as a whole builder. I'm thinking just doubling the width and depth to do it. For environments that I'm doing right now, I started with a little scribble, but eventually I have like a painted up concept of what the final should be based on what I get from Jorge. The designers will block in the level. They'll give me the general lay of the land, and at this point it's like very crude, like polygons. So my job is to translate that spatial information and make it into something with a little more fidelity that the environment modelers can actually go off of. So basically taking the visuals to the next level.
These are, they're gonna be the Adir culture.
For characters, I would get a brief description from Josh. Sometimes it's very detailed. It was fun trying to differentiate each culture visually so that at a glance in the game you'll be like, oh, this guy's probably from Adir. I'm trying to get the first read to be very distinctive.
Yeah, it's gonna zoom out. Let's see what happens when they get really small.
Right after we do variants, we'll sometimes pick the shirt of this one and put it on the pants of that one. And then if that gets approved, we'll do the painting.
I think I would encourage you to maybe reduce the presence of the scale mail.
We still have a rough line work so that the modelers, when they do model a character, they actually know what's happening as opposed to it just being the nice, loose, brushy paintings that you see. Because they have to interpret what the textures are, what is the shape looking like. With line drawings, it explains everything.
Probably need to schedule a couple days to clean shit up. I'm in charge of our characters in the game. Usually we start out with a concept, which the concept artists produce, and then we take that concept and we start building it in 3D. We'll build a 3D model. First we create a block out, which is kind of basic silhouette mesh, like the proportions and the feel of the character. Once we're happy with that, sometimes we put it in the game and just see how it looks in our world from our camera angle. And then we finish the character. We texture it, put the colors on, put shaders on, which shaders tell the character how it interacts with the environment. I work directly with Mark Bremerkamp. He's our lead animator. And I work with Mark, making sure the creatures basically play well with the rigs and they're skinned right. And Antonio Gabella, he's our technical director, basically. He makes all the rigs for characters and creatures.
That involves also a bunch of different tools that we add to the mix, and I'm pretty much the only one doing those tools. Animation tools, character exporters. Being a small team, we can't really use what we used prior, We have to come up with a solution And there's a couple of unique tools that we created for Eternity.
We bind the mesh to a rig, which they then use to animate the creature or the character. From then on, it's in the game. And we continue tweaking them until the game ships, honestly.
We're going this way to talk to... Oh, no, we're going this way. Everybody just moved, so let's see what Hector's doing.
My job is to come up with the pipeline of how we're going to create the background art.
Well, let me ask you this. We can come back to you.
While at the same time delivering on the visual style that is needed for the game. There's also a lot of prototyping initially of how we build out the levels and the areas in hopes that we can figure out, what can be reused a lot, so, we don't have to make a lot of unique assets.
We've shown the world some of the innovations that we're going to employ. Those are the next level. I mean, they definitely are a nice, solid leap away and above what was done a decade ago.
So I'm feeling pretty good about where we are. I'm the boss, so I always wish that things were always farther along than they are, but that's just game development. When we started this out, I had no idea that we were going to be able to do some of the sort of technical things we've done. We had no idea that we could have that level of sort of almost modern graphics. I'm really happy about that. But could we be a little bit farther along right now? Absolutely.
So we're walking to our other environment artist. So you are working on the Ingwithan. No individual can easily predict the problems they're going to have.
A thing about making a game is you have to be very iterative, kind of have to like fail and figure out why you failed and take a step back and do it again.
Inherently, we are, as software developers in the video game industry, all pretty optimistic. You have to be. So far, I think it's been going pretty good, but we do run into our own little technical hitches.
Usually you're able to fix that by going into here and choosing the texture channel diffuse. However, now when I do that, it pops it back to none, so that's awesome.
That's not cool. Okay. So we are Maya novices.
We had been using Softimage at the studio almost exclusively for a few years. So when we decided to switch over to Maya, people realized that it was necessary, but right away people were going like, oh, I just don't like how this does this, or I'm not familiar with how this works, or I have to remap all my keys.
Part of the issue is that they are using the character materials. And so
when your artists don't know the app, they won't be able to problem solve as effectively and as quickly. So that's where we have been losing time.
I was out for a few months. During that time, the project still kept going, but when I returned, I found that they had switched the modeling packages from Exercise to Maya, and I was very comfortable with Exercise since I had been working on it with Exercise for quite a few years.
We made all this stuff in 3D previously, and then rendered it out to 2D, but that was 15 years ago. 3D packages have gotten insane, and rendering power has gone through the roof, and all this other stuff, but we didn't really know, can we render stuff out at this size? Like, how long does it take someone to even make a scene like that?
because if it's a large area, the renders can take quite a while.
We're encountering limits that we weren't used to seeing, especially when it comes to areas as detailed as ours. I mean, we're cramming so much detail to give this the world of richness.
Making games is hard, man. It is. I think people say, "Gosh, it must be so fun to make games," and I wouldn't want to do anything else. But it's nerve-wracking sometimes.
We discovered some things yesterday with the weapon bone. The way we were creating that.
We're always so horrible at estimating how long it's going to take to do something. I think to be efficient with his time, you should, if he's made something for you, you should make sure that it works.
Right.
It's because generally nobody ever wants to be so honest as to imagine that they're going to have problems. And this thing that looks like it should take 2 days is really probably going to take 3 or 4.
It's not rocket science.
It is rocket science,
it's
though.
Game science. It's not like
Otherwise, when he says it's done, it would be done, and then but sometimes it's not really done.
For me, the biggest snag is just the environment art. It's going to be a lot of work to get all that stuff done, and so I know I've been really stressed out about it, and Hector's been really stressed out about it. My major concern right now is like how we are actually going to build all these levels.
Alarm! Alarm!
Seth's starting.
Quit. Save your work.
What is up with this?
I don't know.
Power goes out for 5 minutes. It's the rules of Fallout. No power equals.
When the displays are attached to the UPC, it drains the power quicker. So often they're not attached, but the computer is on, and you have five minutes or more to to save.
So Fergus just paged everyone in the company that we can go home for the day just because we can't get any work done today. You got to have power to make games, and we don't have any power today, so we're not going to make games today.
What we do after prototype is we create a vertical slice. And what that really is meant to do is it's to take all the technology and sort of the foundation we created with the prototype and now go and create what will hopefully be like a final level of the game. So we connect technology with actual gameplay and assets and everything else.
If we do have to have this in, and I'm not even necessarily disagreeing with you. Like, sure. I think a basic cutscene system is like essential to the game, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think it should be cut.
I don't think everything has to be 100% done before this vertical slice, at least according to the list of stuff that we have that we're trying to accomplish.
Because when you enter production, you should just be building stuff.
The funny thing is, like, I agree with you that the cutscene system is essential.
Sure.
I absolutely, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, then we need to figure out what's not, or get more time. And I don't know if we can get more time. That's the problem. It could very well be that Ferg comes over and goes like, yeah, you don't have any more time. You have a week and a half. Like, make this shit happen.
So Josh and I report to Fergus, and so Fergus is kind of acts as our publisher. Can we get all this stuff done in another month? Extend vertical slice for another month, and say whatever doesn't get done after that month.
I mean, certainly one of the things to keep in mind here is that list of features to support design work in the areas and the levels will allow us to do a lot of stuff.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, we shouldn't be punting this early on relatively vital systems. The team is ramped up relatively slowly due to staffing issues. You know what I mean? My guess would be that there are some things that we can punt on. If you talk to Ferg about it, I'm sure that he would probably agree.
As a producer, nobody likes what you do. You know, you're the guy that has to sometimes be a jerk and go like, hey, this really cool thing that everybody wants in game, we can't do it. At the end of every single game, we go through and we go like, look, we really need to cut back on our scope. And we all agree. We do this every time. Everybody nods. Oh yeah, absolutely. We should cut back on scope and get some really well-defined, even if it's small. So initially, Adam was doing a lot of the production role. So I was brought on in June, and I was brought on as the lead producer to take over those roles. And that frees up Adam to be able to program. And then every single time this happens where nobody wants to cut anything, because everybody wants everything in, and then we get into a spot where everything has to go in because everything's half in, and then we have half-built systems. Realistically, all the devs want everything in, and I mean, we all want that, right? There's like a million cool things that we all want to see in the game, but ultimately there's a schedule, there's a budget. I know I'm being a dick here, but like, we need to really lock this down. We need to know exactly what we're doing. We need to have these things in place, or we're not done in pre-production.
Cutscenes is kind of a big system. It can kind of take multiple weeks of programmer time and designer time to get a functioning cutscene system done. And so it's kind of scary since we're a week out from finishing vertical slice right now and we don't have a cutscene system. We have a week left. X amount of features need to get done. We don't have that much time to get them all done. If there's something that's not done by the time that we hit production, that is more likely to get on the chopping block.
There's always going to be some hiccups in the vertical slice process since we don't have a publisher. A lot of times you'll do things to make the vertical slice prettier to impress the publisher to move into production. You end up hacking a lot of things in. I don't know if you've heard that term yet, but hacking things in, it's not the way you want to have a particular system or a way of doing things for the final game because it's inefficient. Ideally, you do want to have a vertical slice that does feel like a final representation of the game, but at the same time, if you're implementing things that are going to put you behind schedule just to make it pretty and hack things in, we try to avoid that. And to be fair, it's actually something that I talked to the interns about just the other day, about like, do they understand the difference between hacking something in and doing it the right way, and mentoring them a little bit because a designer, by definition, will figure out how to get something done, even if the programmers or the systems don't support it, but it's not always the best thing to do.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Here's a healthy list of stuff. Yeah. All right.
Yep. Good times, huh?
Good times.
There's a lot of stuff. Lots of things to do.
It was like a
gray
badger.
He drops the big stone in his hand that he's been threatening you with, and he looks inside of it, kind of turns it upside down and shakes it a little bit, reaches inside and pulls out a... For Pillars of Eternity, one of the things that we did was I actually set up a D&D game that we would play at lunch. I thought it was something cool that would get the creative juices flowing for some of the team members and whatnot, and it was kind of fun too, and it's pretty funny. As we would do it, sometimes I can't believe we're playing D&D at work. You wake up in a cave.
Awesome.
Right in the middle of that
first time.
right in the middle of that cave.
Same cave.
Yeah, it's the same cave that you guys.
So this is the big pile of silver.
Yep.
Okay.
Where's everyone else?
Why am I on a pile of silver?
One of the things that I think is important when designing what we've been calling somewhat an old school RPG is to make sure that we're looking back on some of the predecessors, the things that inspired these in the first place. Particularly the older school games like the IE games were really, really inspired by tabletop sessions. When you're a GM, you're essentially a game designer. If you're creating anything on your own and just using the rules of whatever system you're using, you're essentially being a level designer. I'm a level designer, so our job is essentially to take the work of every other department, whether it's narrative design, systems design, artists, animation, and bring that all together in a cohesive experience. You know, 4th, 5th grade, D&D was kind of like the thing back then. Even my parents didn't like it. I think my dad even threw away my monster manual because it had like devils and demons in it and things like that, and we're like, yeah, that's cool. Being an area designer, it takes me years to get a lot of feedback. Then generally you have to create the product, and then at the end of the cycle, a bunch of people play it and review it, and they either say like, oh, I loved it, or oh, that was shit. With D&D, actually, it's actually kind of cool because the people are at the table with you. So whatever it is that you designed, you're like, as long as you're being perceptive, you get the instant feedback from their faces. I think there's a lot of lessons that I learned from doing some of that that I can bring into my job now, that I just know that like, hey, if I do this and the pacing is bad, you know, I've seen enough people that I get feedback from what's fun and what's not fun.
Powerful charges.
You know, the old role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons and a lot of the video games that were, or the CRPGs that have been spawned off of those. Those games were very complicated and they didn't hold your hand quite so much. Sometimes it's fun to make the player figure out a little something on their own. At the end of the day, my personal belief is like, I want to make sure that the player has the freedom to do what it is they want to do. In any instance where I can, I would rather go that route.
Oh, so close. It's a fail element. 2, 3, lift.
We were a little concerned leaving Vertical Slice that we wouldn't be able to get up to speed, like to real speed. We want to move even faster, but we're getting there, and our staff has gone up a lot. So we have 4 environment artists right now, and that is huge. And we're developing a library of assets that help us generate new areas very quickly. Environment art is such a huge part of this game, and there's not a lot of ways you can sort of shortcut around that. In a 3D game, it's arguable that once you have the 3D components, you can just put those together, you know, in a level and like, yeah, you know, designers can link those together and whatever, but these are all rendered out, so they require a 3D artist to really build them. Stuff's coming together, it's looking great, it's a very good start to production.
If you guys didn't know, we're trying to release the backer website. So what I want to do, along with that backer site, is release a teaser video. So it'll be like a teaser trailer.
So right now we're making this teaser trailer showing actual gameplay, actual game. And we have, 20 days to do it.
What I would like to target
is a 1 minute and 30-second trailer, right around there.
It has to look good as it can, because it's going to be selling our game basically at this point. Eternity doesn't have a marketing staff. There's nobody to market it, to sell it, to put money into it. It's just us. So whatever we do needs to be as good as we can make it, so players are excited about it and enjoy it.
So we are trying to base this off of the Infinity Engine trailers, which, like, basically what Adam did is he just watched them, analyzed what they did. They were about 1.5 minutes long, 2 to 3 second cuts. Typically they would show concept art, or they would have little blurbs about, you know, like 150 spells, or, you know, like whatever.
If you look at Bethesda's trailer,
We don't have a lot of time to get it together, and we have full schedules. It's going to be a very interesting and long process, a lot of sleepless nights, but it's worth it. This is kind of like our baby, and we get to show it to people and make it look good. Compositing the trailer in After Effects, and it consists of some footage made specifically by us and some concept art that we're going to show. We're saving the logo for the last because there's been some back and forth about it, and we're trying to figure out the proper way of showing it or revealing it. So it's the last part of the trailer. So it's not quite done yet, but will be done very soon.
How much more work do you have on it?
Just gonna refine this lower area and give it a better frame for the backing of the text.
We already passed the year anniversary at the start of the Kickstarter. By the time we show the trailer, we'll be at about the year mark of the end of the Kickstarter. And if we're showing a trailer, like, let's get a name.
Even to just get to Project Eternity took a good month of debate.
Most projects, the public doesn't know and that the project exists. In this case, though, we essentially said, we're making a game, and it's this code name.
It started off with an email from Josh, and he had a lot of rules with it.
I said, okay, so here's a few things. Keep Eternity in the title. Don't use the word reckoning. Don't use the word sundering. Don't use the word shadow or darkness or gerunds in general. Just don't, nothing ing, like, just get them out of there. So I said, like, go.
Right now it's Pillars of Eternity. That is going to be the name, Pillars of Eternity. So one of the things we're doing right now is kind of coming up with our logo. It seems like it'd be kind of like an easy process. The thing about it is it's one of the most complicated things. It's just hard to get something that's so simple and perfect and really encapsulates what your product stands for.
It is a decent amount of pressure, particularly the artist who's currently involved in it. Currently, Kaz is doing all the rough ideas. Usually, in a traditional publisher-developer relationship, the publisher has a certain amount of money set aside, as well as a graphic design team that would do all this. But in this case, we have to do it ourselves.
I was like, that doesn't sound right.
My fault. Right here. Right here.
Oh
God of Ra,
awesome. Want to try it one more time from the top?
When I knew we were going to do the trailer, I really wanted it to be something special. So I sent an email out to the company and asking for volunteers, and I was able to assemble a small ensemble of musicians. If we're talking about like your average AAA video game, you know, the budget for the music may be a couple $100,000, and that's to hire the composer and the orchestrator and an orchestra and live, or live musicians, and the costs certainly add up. So for Eternity, we have to be very deliberate about how we spend the money. At the same time, we don't want to sacrifice quality either.
All right, this is good. It's gonna be good. Guys, see ya.
A lot of times for music for video games, you'll want to bring in live musicians whenever possible. Sometimes it's not always possible because of money. Obsidian is a pretty big place. I figured there had to be some musicians who worked here.
I really wanted to play. I hadn't had a chance to play my violin in a while, and I wasn't expecting so many other musicians.
And it was
the first time that I played in something like 10 years.
A lot of people learn music when they grow up. You know, it's something that they don't really follow through as a career, but they still do. I've always kind of liked the way that the lobby outside in front of Obsidian sounds. It's kind of a big marble room. So I thought it'd be cool to record the musicians in that room.
Definitely not very conventional recording space, but it sounds good.
One of the reasons why I wanted to use choir and wanted to use real people is because we could sing words. When you use like software libraries and sample libraries, realism is sort of a difficult thing to achieve, and it's always faster to get a realistic sound when you just use live people. So we had a choir, we had a string quartet, and we had a French horn player. In the choir, we had Josh Sawyer, who's the project director for Project Eternity. He sang tenor in the choir. Josh is a really cool guy, and he's got many talents beyond directing projects. And you know, I sort of came to him and I said, "What if you write lyrics in an ancient language that is in the setting of the game, and so that we could sort of have this deeper connection within the music?" There were some very specific pronunciations that we had to use that were inspired, I believe, by Welsh dialects. We got down to the etymology of the words. It sort of makes it seem real because it's based in reality. It's based in stuff that, you know, already exists. There were a lot of interruptions because it's like in a public space. It was late at night, so the cleaning crew was there. The crew that sort of maintains the building at night, you know, they had to do their jobs too. So I think that we surprised them more than they surprised us. But we somehow managed to squeeze through the little cracks and get some good recordings. The music was kind of tricky, and it came together sort of late, and everyone's got jobs and they've got other commitments that they've got going on, so there were some pieces of the music that we weren't able to rehearse as much as others, so I had to do a bit of editing to kind of get it together.
There was a difficult part with my violin. I had to do one section with really fast triplets, and normally the music goes through the entire page and it's all extremely fast, and I had to go through it line by line because trying to play the entire thing like kind of made my fingers trip over each other, and it was pretty challenging just because it was so fast, but he made it work, and yeah, it sounded awesome.
So we're coming into the holidays, and it's been a pretty good year on Eternity. Are we exactly where we want to be right now? Probably not. Eternity is a big game, but we're in a lot better position than we've been on some of our other projects.
I've been working in the game industry for about 10 years now, so I'm kind of used to it. I do this because I love it, so I don't really mind the long hours. Usually what I do, just to keep sane, is I have a lot of like scheduled activities throughout the week. I've learned throughout my career that that's kind of a good way of working. to keep a good balance between work and life. I play a lot of soccer, and I've been doing this for a long time now, and it's a chance to kind of get outside and have some fun. I just work up until 9, so I get in the office at like 9 a.m. and I work until 8 o'clock at night and just head to the game. And I usually put in about those hours unless I'm here or going to a hockey game. We used to have an Obsidian team about 5 years ago. Josh and I played on the team, but we didn't have enough players, so we stopped doing that. I know people watching this will make fun of me. Say I don't tie these the right way. I keep doing it. Haven't gotten injured yet, so as I'm getting older, I'm getting slower, but I'm keeping up with the guys, so it's been pretty fun. Except for today when it's like super freaking cold out. It's not so fun, but hopefully when I start running around, it'll be better.
Good ball, Randy.
Killing some wolves over here. We're seeing why it's why the frame rate goes to shit. It's a profiler, so it tells you like at any given point in time like how long it takes to run different pieces of code. When it starts spiking up this big block right here, that's where it's bad. I'm just checking some of my code that I've checked out, that I've changed recently to see if any of that is causing the game to slow down.
So right now is the end of May, going into June. We are in Alpha 2, so this is our second milestone in Alpha. On June 6th, so in a few weeks, we're actually going to be jumping into the beta period.
There's new adventure awaiting for you today.
Yes, so we have our new bug database up, Jira, and so I sent out an email document basis of Jira, and so any issues that you find, write those up, they'll automatically. Once we hit the alpha phase of the game, we're going to have a good solid QA test team just rolling through the game. We're going to have people doing progression testing, while making sure people are going through and for balancing purposes and trying to knock out all the bugs.
All right, so the general rule is like at alpha, we should have all our content. All the parts are there, but I won't say that it's fantastic yet. I think right now one of the things that's really kind of been the hardest to deal with is actually on the writing side. Eric Fenstermaker, who is the narrative lead on Eternity, he's actually been stuck on South Park. This is great for Eric and for the company in a whole, and that Matt and Trey, the South Park guys, really trust Eric. He's had to kind of go back and forth, and sometimes he could spend time on Eternity, and sometimes he can't, and that's been tough. It's a hard decision because you don't want to hurt one game to help another game. But I don't think if we say, hey, we're going to ship in this month over this month, of the same year, people want it to be good. Everyone wants everything now. I mean, that's, and we're maybe a little bit more like that every day. But, when we read the forums and we talk to people, everyone's like, but make it good. A game is late until it ships, but it sucks forever.
The story is really, a big part of, I think, what people are paying for when you buy, an Infinity Engine style game. That's part of what people remember about those games that made them good. When I was just coming out of the project, I made sure to play through Planescape Torment and to play through Baldur's Gate 2, and to make sure we were sort of hitting the same notes with the story that made those things good. We're using prose in this, which hasn't been done since probably Planescape Torment that I can remember. And that adds a whole new dimension.
And instead of just having, very brief lines of dialogue and, journal entries or emails or whatever it is your character reads, you do have sort of these paragraphs that include description.
So it's interesting. Everybody's like kind of stretching some new muscles in terms of their writing. I haven't written prose in years.
We still have a lot of writing to do for the companions, and that's the stuff that has to be the best. The hope is that that's the major game thing that is past alpha.
It's important that the Eye of Sauron isn't on us.
Yeah, so he's not making that scenario.
The project kind of like ebbs and flows, so it gets really playable and it's like really fun, and then we're like, okay, let's shove a bunch more shit into it, and then it kind of it's like a roller coaster where it starts to degrade because we're not really fixing things at that point. We're at alpha, that's probably where we're shoving a lot of stuff in at the end, right before we hit the alpha milestone date.
It's about to get really not fun for developers, and end up working 60 to 80 hour weeks to make sure that what you're putting out is going to be awesome.
So we flip these every time one of these columns gets done on a level, and then once they're all happy faced, that means that level is an alpha, and we're good to go.
I'm just waiting for David to give me the all clear. Welcome to our presentation of Pillars of Eternity. My name is Adam Brennicke. I'm the executive producer and lead programmer at Obsidian. And this is Matthew Sheets. He's our lead QA, and he's going to be driving today. 2 years ago, we raised over $4 million thanks to our generous over 75,000 backers. We've been showing our game for the past 4 hours, and it's showing off really well. It's kind of a relief that it's going okay. We've been kind of working really hard over the past month to make sure that this demo really shines.
I think we have 3 days scheduled, and about 80 people from the press are going to be seeing the game for the very first time. It's a good spot for us because we're such a small game. If we're at E3, that's freaking fantastic. Our demo is going to be just behind closed doors. We're not going to be showing it to the public. We have to be very careful about on our talking points is not to spoil anything. We try to keep it even a mystery to the journalists.
The awesome thing, like almost every single presentation, there's always someone in the audience that backed our game. And so that's been a really cool thing too, that not only that they're covering the game for their work, but they're actually really invested in the game as well. So we pause the game right now, we can give orders. For example, we're going to cast one of our wizard abilities, which is a ability called Ghost Blades. So Pillars of Eternity is a classic style fantasy role-playing game. We've taken our inspiration from...
I personally dislike showing games at E3. I've done it a couple times now where it's like a full day thing where you have to talk and talk all day. You're on your feet all day and you kind of say the same, you go through the same motions like 40 or 50 times to people. And a lot of times the people that you're talking to have no idea what the game is, or they've never even heard of it before. And they probably won't even write anything about the game.
It's a little bit nerve-wracking. You're presenting to people and you don't know how they're going to react to it. You don't know if they're going to enjoy what you're doing, if this thing that you just spent years creating, you don't know if they're going to think is the dumbest thing, around.
Thankfully, everything went really smooth. I think it's showing off really well. But yeah, I need some rest. So hopefully tomorrow I can sleep.
Actually, I can open it real quick. It's mid-August, and we're getting pretty close to releasing our backer beta. Yeah, right now I'm actually just going onto the forums and talking with people that are like really excited about everything. They're like, yeah, I want to play, but I have to be like, hey, by the way, we were delaying it by an hour, and then so some people are not the happiest people. Originally, we weren't going to launch the beta at the time that we did.
So we knew that we were going to be showing Gamescom. It's a huge show. It's in Europe. A ton of our backers are in Europe. We didn't believe that we could show it there without making it available for people to play. And if we made it available for people to play, felt like it was time then to put out the backer beta.
We would have liked to have like maybe a few more weeks to kind of polish things up. But yeah, so we kind of did like a little bit of an early release.
It was probably like 2 weeks before we wanted to ship it.
The state of the beta when we first launched, it was kind of rough.
We weren't really surprised that a lot of people were very critical.
We knew that there was still a lot that needed to be done. There were definitely areas that we wanted to target to fix.
It felt like pretty good to play, but there were also a lot of frustrating elements to it. But even as Adam and I were playing it, we could recognize like, oh man, this interface problem is so annoying. Like this pathfinding bug is so annoying. This inventory bug is so annoying. This character stopped moving. That's incredibly annoying. So there was this collection of small things that were adding together to make the experience really frustrating.
We knew that there were some big bugs, especially with the AI system.
We said like pathfinding, player input, feedback, AI, these are all things that we know we have to work on. So for the most part, people seem to like especially the aesthetics of the game. They like just the general vibe of it, like it feels very Infinity Engine-like in many ways. But there are other things that were very frustrating, and so we knew we needed to get on that right away.
It's nice that we were able to put it out there when we said that this is the day we're going to put it out there. We put it out there on that day. And it's nice that it's early enough that we can get feedback from people. I think that's, for us, that's the most important thing. We like to have those discussions as early as possible so then we can discuss changes and actually do things. It was a little bit hot going out. At least we can do something about it and get good feedback.
So right now it's November 2014. We delayed the game a little while ago. Right now we're trying to finish the game, trying to wrap it all up. We've been working really hard, late hours recently. Right now we're primarily bug fixing. Me being the lead programmer, I get a lot of the crash bugs and we have to go through those. And right now we're looking at like 1,200 bugs, I think, open right now on programming. We usually try to fix about 10 bugs a day. It takes someone like a QA tester, it takes them 40 hours plus to play through the entire game. And if you really think about that, what that means is that it takes someone an entire week, a work week, if they're working 8 hours a day to play through the game to make sure that it can be completed from beginning to end.
QA is like the last people on the project still working. We're pretty much the last defense before it gets out to the public, so we're always working till like the bitter end.
There's a certain level of polish that we want. We want to be really proud of this game. And the good thing is we don't have a publisher like breathing down our neck to ship by Christmas. We felt, based on backer feedback or our own internal feedback of playing the game, that it wasn't quite ready to go. This is our first IP that Obsidian owns. This is the first title with this IP. We don't want to ship something that tarnishes the IP that we've created.
And we're always a little worried about our reputation from the standpoint of having a game that's really finished when we release it. When we're kind of known for something, people gravitate. It's human nature, right? And so when Obsidian releases a game, there's this concern that it's going to be buggy. And a part of it is our games are big and they're complicated and complicated in different ways than other games. So that's not an excuse. I want to make things that people enjoy and are not frustrated with. I think we're doing better at that with games that we've come out more recently.
The frustrating thing when the game is really buggy is that it's almost like you don't know where to start.
One of the programmers came to me and said they found a suggestion buried in our bug list. The suggestion was that certain projectiles should fade faster than they were, but when he dove into the bug, he found out that the actual projectile was not ever going away. If you have multiple projectiles and they all have bounce delays, the first one bounces and the other ones just stay there, invisible, but still in the world, using memory and eating up processor time because they have updates, but not doing anything. And it happened every time you cast this wizard spell. This immediately took that C-level suggestion bug up to an A-level, this needs to be fixed immediately bug, which goes into my queue of 455 other bugs that I'm trying to get solved in the next few weeks. I think Josh has been really good at editing himself and deciding. We have a few abilities of a certain type, and it's just not working out. It causes a lot of bugs. It doesn't play well, and he just takes them out.
Like, so we have areas, we have quests where we go like, this quest is just fundamentally, it's never going to get better. Like, it has a lot of fundamental flaws. We just got to cut it. And the sooner we do that, it saves so much time for other people, and they can focus on the stuff that can be saved. Until I really feel it's worthy of going out, I have to keep saying like, this is not ready. These things need to be fixed. People are going to be pissed off if they see this.
There is just a tremendous amount of content in this game. I felt like we were keeping things in check, but it's just grown. The second highest game would probably be Neverwinter Nights. For whatever reason, Eternity ended up being a lot larger. And now we're putting in a lot more time now. It's actually the most rewarding phase. And it's the phase that I enjoy the most. Everything is sort of created, and now you actually get to take it to the next level and make it look really nice. If we don't get this phase, which has happened in previous projects because of whatever, it always sucks.
We've only got a couple months left, and you know, it's time to start wrapping it up. So I've shifted over to music writing mode right now. We worked with an orchestrator. His name was Ryan Humphreys. We were fortunate enough to be able to record some live music. We found an orchestra that came pretty highly recommended, and they were based in Budapest, Hungary. Because of the time difference. Our start time was 4 in the morning here, and their start time was 4 in the afternoon there. And you know, I'm there with my coffee in the morning and bleary-eyed and trying to Skype to them, and you know, the conductor would get our feedback, and we would just talk back and forth that way. It actually worked out pretty great, surprisingly.
Right now I have 151 bugs. It peaked somewhere around 700. It breaks down, there's only 7 A bugs, and those are bugs that would be horrible to ship with. And then there's about 40 B bugs, and those are bugs that, they're bad, but they're not gonna stop anybody from getting through the game. And that leaves just over 100 C bugs. Every time you make a big change in the game, the resulting code is a little more fragile. So if you go back and forth too much on features, the game gets even buggier. We've got dozens of people playing through the game every day, and they're taking different classes and races, and we're trying to catch every possible bug that could happen from having these diverse character groups go through in different ways. Probably the issues we're running into now is they saw a bug happen, but then they couldn't reproduce it. So they're trying to find out what that magic condition was. That's what they're doing every day, nights and weekends. They just play through over and over again.
I think the programmers still realize right now that they have a road that they have to get down to bring their bug counts down to what we need them to be able to ship.
You know, it's a mad dash trying to fix as many bugs as we possibly can. People are working overtime, trying to get a bunch of stuff done. You can bet that there's always some weird combination of stuff that somebody can do to cause a really bad bug, so we're trying to find that stuff now. The funny thing is, we will actually probably not pass the first time on Gold Master. And that's pretty normal. It's super rare for you to actually get a game that you submit as a Gold Master to a publisher and actually have them check it off and go like, yep, this is perfect on the first time. You know, it's possible that they could take another build from like next week, but I really doubt it. I think that this is the one that's gonna go on there. A release candidate is a version of the game that the developer is submitting for Gold Master to a publisher. This could be it, like RC3 right here, this could be the thing that goes onto the discs.
Everybody from Obsidian. It was a long, hard last 3 or 4 years. Thanks for putting up with it. Thanks for making an amazing fucking game. And just to kind of cut this for a few people, I want to thank Adam here.
We're here now at the release party. I'm still really stressed out because we haven't gotten any reviews yet. There's still a lot of work to do tomorrow to make sure the game goes out smoothly. We're #1 on Steam right now in sales, which is huge for us. This is probably one of the best days at Obsidian.
Right now, I'm just more nervous than anything else. For me, like until the game is actually out there and people are playing it, I'm just a ball of nerves. I have a checklist that I've gone over 100 times, and I've gone over everything, you know, all the contingencies in my head 100 times. But until it actually happens, I'm just going to be worried that something is always going to go wrong. And I don't know, I guess that's like kind of a curse of being a producer.
It's kind of like a mix of butterflies and stress, weird stress. All the early impressions seem to be very, very positive, but we're not sure yet. I'm trying to take it easy tonight.
People that have done this a while are pretty chill about it. Like, yeah, everybody's still nervous, but we know we put in the work. And now it's more just of like, we want a smooth release, we want it to go really well, and we want it to sell well just because that's going to allow us to make more of these games or more of the games that we really want to do. And no work is going to be getting done tomorrow because you're going to be even if you want to do work, you're going to be so distracted looking at all the reviews, and like there's going to be so much back and forth email, and we're going to be talking about everything. And yeah, we'll get like a lot of important fixes done, but like it's going to be so hard to keep on task.
Have an awesome rest of the night. Download Attorney when you get home, and play for the next 100 hours. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
A wonderful, enormous, spellbinding RPG gloriously created in the image of BioWare's Infinity Classics, but distinctly its own. I mean, we've got people that have actually given us 100%. I mean, I've actually never worked on a game ever that's had any review of note hit 100.
This morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, I get a text message saying the first reviews are out, and I look at my phone and I read that, and I'm like, oh, are they good? And there's just like a smiley face.
Well, folks, it's finally happened. Crowdfunding has been vindicated. Kickstarter has made a masterpiece.
We hit it right on the spot. Just reading what people are saying about it, I think they're kind of starving for this type of game, and I think we delivered and met their expectations and probably beat their expectations of what this game was supposed to be.
So The Escapist was a great example. It was one of the first reviews that went up, and you know, it's kind of where we were all getting kind of excited because you're like, okay, what's one of those first reviews going to be? You know, and they gave it 5 stars out of 5.
You know, I personally thought like probably low to mid 80s. That's not to say I didn't think the game was better than low to mid 80s. I just thought that it wouldn't really review very well. We came in this morning and I was looking at the stuff. It was well, it started off, it was like 94, 95, I think now it's down to 93, but that's still amazing, and it's one of the top games, you know, at this rate, it's one of the top games of all time for PC on Metacritic.
You know, my favorite role-playing game of all time was Baldur's Gate 2. So it was pretty magical just to come down and work on this. It's really surreal that there's this thing that so many people here have been passionate about, that's been arguably the game I wanted to be part of my whole life. And then just to see the reaction today, a 93 for a genre of game that hasn't been out for a decade. There's days like this in the industry that you might happen once, maybe twice. This one is pretty prolific in that it says, at the very end, everything promised has been delivered in a labor of love that proves how deserving Obsidian was of such an outpouring of faith.
Looking back over the past 2.5 years, I would never expect it to be received this well. And when you're so tied to the game and you work so closely with it every day, and it's like your entire life, you have no idea how it's going to turn out. You kind of have a feeling that you have something special, but during the game's development, it's a roller coaster ride. And just working so hard on this game for the past 2 years, you know, today is a relief. If you told me the game was going to, you know, if our early Metacritic scores were going to be over 90, there was no way that I would ever believe that. It's pretty freaking amazing.
I mean, what's just been kind of great is just also to see all the reviews with them all putting, because for the budget we had, you know, putting in like, you know, it was a lot. Could we do the art at a level that people felt it was, you know, it's not your Call of Duty or Dragon Age Inquisition, but it's cool to see like all the screenshots in here because it all just looks really good, it's really nice to see something that you've done that that gets that level of a score.
To say it's better these days is an understatement.
We're able to breathe now. Like it's like, finally, like we can kind of like just relax and let go, especially for a night.
I think just the sense of morale is a lot higher because we were able to make something that we really wanted to make and make it on our terms and talk to the fans and get their feedback.
Yeah, like the office is crazy right now because everyone's just smiling and giving each other hugs and high fives, and it's pretty cool.
We made the game that we wanted to make. We made the world in the way that we wanted to make it. And I feel that we've delivered something that captures the essence of the games that we were trying to emulate.
We wanted to make a game that people felt like this was a modern incarnation, or it was like a modern throwback, if that even makes sense, to the Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale and the Infinity Engine games. And every review that's come back is like, that is absolutely what it is. You know, when that's the thing that you've underlined and said, we're gonna go do that, and you do it, I'm proud of that. I feel like we really succeeded with what we set out to do.
Being able to work on our own intellectual property is extremely fulfilling, but it also means that we have a lot more freedom in the future to do stuff with that intellectual property. That's something that I think every independent developer wants to be able to do, but it's very difficult to actually do that with a publisher model.
I know I keep on returning to the same thing, and I think the most gratifying thing is getting to make something that you own. And if there's anything I could ever tell anybody about whatever they might want to do in life, I think that is the most amazing thing, because you get to have something that it's like your own Lego set that now it's mine. I can go build it in a different way, and I now can build it this way, and I can do that. I can have my lemonade stand. I can do all these things. Because you not only get to point at it from the standpoint of I made that, I both made it, I own it, and I get to do a whole bunch more cool things with it. And so in life, anyone who can be able to do that, do something and have it be theirs, should do whatever they can to make that happen.
For a lot of us, we've never ever been able to work on a sequel to anything that we've actually done. We work on a lot of sequels, but we've never been able to work on a sequel of our own game. Especially at Obsidian, we've never done that. So now it's another first for us, as we get to do a sequel to a game that we've already worked on. And being able to have that same team work on another project and keep the team together is going to be freaking awesome, and I'm really looking forward to that. We have a lot of grand ideas on how to expand the world, and now this is our own IP. We can do a whole lot with it.
Often when we're working with a publisher, by the time the game has come out, we've already moved on. This is very different in that, like, today was talking about what are we doing with the expansions? What are we doing with sequels? What are we doing? And our publisher Paradox is here, and they're excited. They want to know everything that we can do.
We're already starting to plan out the next thing and getting the ball rolling, because you don't want to waste any time, right?
It's like the start of something rather than the end of something.